Chapter 1. The Tao that can be spoken of is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one can see the manifestations. These two spring from the same source but differ in name. This appears as darkness. Darkness within darkness. The gate to all mystery. Chapter 2. When all the world recognizes beauty as beauty, this in itself is ugliness. When all the world recognizes good as good, this in itself is evil. Indeed, the hidden and the manifest give birth to each other. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short exhibit each other. High and low set measure to each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Back and front follow each other. Therefore, the sage manages affairs without action, and spreads doctrines without words. All things arise, and the sage does not turn away from them. The sage produces without possessing, acts without expectation, and accomplishes without claiming credit. Because the sage does not claim credit, credit does not leave them. Chapter 3. Not exalting the gifted prevents quarreling. Not collecting treasures prevents stealing. Not seeing desirable things prevents confusion of the heart. The wise therefore rule by emptying hearts and stuffing bellies, by weakening ambitions and strengthening bones. If people lack knowledge and desire, then the crafty will not interfere. If nothing is done, then all will be well. Chapter 4. The Tao is like an empty vessel, that may be used but never filled. It is bottomless, the very progenitor of all things. It blunts the sharpness, unravels the knots, dims the glare, and settles the dust. This is called the mysterious sameness. Though its depths are unending, it appears to have originated from something. It is older than the beginning of time. Chapter 5. Heaven and earth are impartial. They treat all things as sacrificial straw dogs. The sage is impartial. They treat all people as sacrificial straw dogs. The space between heaven and earth is like a bellows. It is empty, yet never exhausted. It moves, and more is always produced. Much talk leads to exhaustion. It is better to hold fast to the center. Chapter 6. The spirit of the valley never dies. It is called the mysterious female. The entrance of the mysterious female is called the root of heaven and earth. It is continuous, and seems to be always existing. Use it and it will never be exhausted. Chapter 7. Heaven and earth are eternal. The reason they are eternal is that they do not exist for themselves. Thus, they can last forever. Therefore, the sage puts themselves last, and yet they are first. They are outside of themselves, and yet they survive. Is it not due to their selflessness that they can achieve their own goals? Chapter 8. The highest good is like water. Water benefits all things without contention. It flows in places that people reject, and thus it is close to the Tao. In dwelling, be close to the ground. In thinking, keep to the simple. In conflict, be fair and generous. In governing, do not try to control. In work, do what you enjoy. In family life, be completely present. When you are content to be simply yourself, and do not compare or compete, everybody will respect you. Chapter 9. To hold and fill to overflowing is not as good as to stop in time. Sharpen a sword edge to its very sharpest, and the edge will not last long. When gold and jade fill your hall, you will not be able to keep them safe. To be proud with wealth and honor is to sow seeds of one's own downfall. Retire when the work is done. This is the way of heaven. Chapter 10. In embracing the One with your soul, can you never forsake the Tao? In controlling your vital force to achieve gentleness, can you become like a newborn child? In cleansing and purifying your inner vision, can you strive to make it flawless? In loving the people and ruling the state, can you govern without interference? In opening and closing the gates of heaven, can you be like a mother bird? In penetrating the four quarters with your insight, can you remain uninvolved? Give them life and nourish them. Give them life but do not possess them. Benefit them but do not demand gratitude. Direct them but do not control them. This is called the mysterious power. Chapter 11. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the cinder hole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. Cut doors and windows for a room. It is the holes which make it useful. Therefore, benefit comes from what is there. Usefulness comes from what is not there. Chapter 12. The 5 colors blind the eye. The 5 tones deafen the ear. The 5 flavors dull the taste. Racing and hunting madden the mind. Precious things lead one astray. Therefore, the sage is guided by what they feel, and not by what they see. They let go of that and choose this. Chapter 13. Favor and disgrace cause one dismay. What we value and what we fear are within ourself. What does this mean? Favor and disgrace cause one dismay. Those who receive a favor from above are dismayed when they receive it, and dismayed when they lose it. What we value and what we fear are within ourself. We have fears because we have a self. When we do not regard that self as self, what have we to fear? Therefore, one who values the world as their self may be entrusted with the government of the world. One who loves the world as their self may be entrusted with the care of the world. Chapter 14. Look at it, and it cannot be seen. It is called the invisible. Listen to it, and it cannot be heard. It is called the inaudible. Grasp it, and it cannot be held. It is called the intangible. These 3 are indefinable. Therefore, they are one. From above, it is not bright. From below, it is not dark. An unbroken thread beyond description. It returns to nothingness. This is called the form of the formless, the image of the imageless. It is called the transcendent. Go forward to meet it, and there is no beginning. Follow it, and there is no end. Stay with the ancient Tao. Move with the present. Knowing the ancient beginning is the essence of Tao. Chapter 15. The ancient masters of Tao were subtle, mysterious, and profound. Their wisdom was unfathomable. There is no way to describe it. All we can describe is their appearance. They were cautious like one crossing an icy stream. They were alert like a warrior in enemy territory. They were courteous like a guest. They were fluid like melting ice. They were shapeable like a block of wood. They were receptive like a valley. They were clear like a glass of water. Do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving until the right action arises by itself? The master doesn't seek fulfillment. Not seeking, not expecting. They are present, and can welcome all things. Chapter 16. Empty your mind of all thoughts. Let your heart be at peace. Watch the turmoil of beings, but contemplate their return. Each separate being in the universe returns to the common source. Returning to the source is serenity. If you don't realize the source, you stumble in confusion and sorrow. When you realize where you come from, you naturally become tolerant, disinterested, amused, kind-hearted as a grandmother, dignified as a king. Immersed in the wonder of the Tao, you can deal with whatever life brings you. And when death comes, you are ready. Chapter 17. When the master governs, the people are hardly aware that he exists. Next best is a leader who is loved. Next, one who is feared. The worst is one who is despised. If you don't trust the people, you make them untrustworthy. The master doesn't talk, he acts. When his work is done, the people say, "Amazing! We did it, all by ourselves." Chapter 18. When the great Tao is forgotten, kindness and morality arise. When wisdom and intelligence are born, the great pretense begins. When there is no peace in the family, filial piety and devotion arise. When the country is confused and in chaos, loyal ministers appear. Chapter 19. Give up sainthood, renounce wisdom, and it will be 100 times better for everyone. Give up kindness, renounce morality, and men will rediscover filial piety and love. Give up ingenuity, renounce profit, and bandits and thieves will disappear. These three are outward forms alone. They are not sufficient in themselves. It is more important to see the simplicity, to realize one's true nature, to cast off selfishness, and temper desire. Chapter 20. Stop thinking, and end your problems. What difference between yes and no? What difference between success and failure? Must you value what others value? Avoid what others avoid? How ridiculous! Other people are excited, as though they were at a parade. I alone don't care. I alone am expressionless, like an infant before it can smile. Other people have what they need. I alone possess nothing. I alone drift about, like someone without a home. I am like an idiot, my mind is so empty. Other people are bright. I alone am dark. Other people are sharp. I alone am dull. Other people have a purpose. I alone don't know. I drift like a wave on the ocean. I blow as aimless as the wind. I am different from ordinary people. I drink from the Great Mother's breasts. Chapter 21. The Master keeps her mind always at one with the Tao. That is what gives her her radiance. The Tao is ungraspable. How can her mind be at one with it? Because she doesn't cling to ideas. The Tao is dark and unfathomable. How can it make her radiant? Because she lets it. Since before time and space were, the Tao is. It is beyond is and is not. How do I know this is true? I look inside myself and see. Chapter 22. If you want to become whole, let yourself be partial. If you want to become straight, let yourself be crooked. If you want to become full, let yourself be empty. If you want to be reborn, let yourself die. If you want to be given everything, give everything up. The Master, by residing in the Tao, sets an example for all beings. Because he doesn't display himself, people can see his light. Because he has nothing to prove, people can trust his words. Because he doesn't know who he is, people recognize themselves in him. Because he has no goal in mind, everything he does succeeds. When the ancient masters said, "If you want to be given everything, give everything up," they weren't using empty phrases. Only in being lived by the Tao can you be truly yourself. Chapter 23. To talk little is natural. High winds do not last all morning. Heavy rain does not last all day. Why is this? Heaven and earth. If heaven and earth cannot make things eternal, how is it possible for humans? Those who follow the Tao are at one with the Tao. Those who follow virtue are at one with virtue. Those who abandon the Tao are at one with loss. Those at one with the Tao gladly welcomes. Those at one with virtue, virtue gladly welcomes. Those at one with loss, loss gladly welcomes. If you do not trust enough, you will not be trusted. Chapter 24. Standing on tiptoe, you cannot stand firm. Straddling your legs, you cannot walk. Showing off, you cannot shine. Boasting, you cannot be honored. Prideful, you cannot lead. These actions are repugnant in the eyes of the Tao. They are like surplus food and useless growths. Those who follow the Tao avoid them. Chapter 25. There was something formless and perfect before the universe was born. It is serene, empty, solitary, unchanging, infinite, eternally present. It is the mother of the universe. For lack of a better name, I call it the Tao. It flows through all things, inside and outside, and returns to the origin of all things. The Tao is great. The universe is great. Earth is great. Man is great. These are the four great powers. Man follows the earth. Earth follows the universe. The universe follows the Tao. The Tao follows only itself. Chapter 26. The heavy is the root of the light. The unmoved is the source of all movement. Thus, the Master travels all day, without leaving home. However splendid the views, she stays serenely in herself. Why should the lord of the country flit about like a fool? If you let yourself be blown to and fro, you lose touch with your root. If you let restlessness move you, you lose touch with who you are. Chapter 27. A good traveler has no fixed plans. and is not intent upon arriving. A good artist lets his intuition lead him wherever it wants. A good scientist has freed himself of concepts and keeps his mind open to what is. Thus the master is available to all people and doesn't reject anyone. He is ready to use all situations and doesn't waste anything. This is called embodying the light. What is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? If you don't understand this, you will get lost, however intelligent you are. It is the great secret. Chapter 28. Know the masculine, hold to the feminine. Be the watercourse of the world. Being the watercourse of the world, the eternal virtue does not depart. Return to the state of the infant. Know the white, hold to the black. Be the standard of the world. Being the standard of the world, the eternal virtue does not deviate. Return to the state of the boundless. Know the honor, hold to the humility. Be the valley of the world. Being the valley of the world, the eternal virtue shall be sufficient. Return to the state of plain wood. Plain wood splits, then becomes tools. The sages utilize them and become leaders. Thus the greater whole is undivided. Chapter 29. Do you think you can take over the universe and improve it? I do not believe it can be done. The universe is sacred. You cannot improve it. If you try to change it, you will ruin it. If you try to hold it, you will lose it. So sometimes things are ahead and sometimes they are behind. Sometimes breathing is hard, sometimes it comes easily. Sometimes there is strength, and sometimes weakness. Sometimes one is up and sometimes down. Therefore the sage avoids extremes, excesses, and complacency. Chapter 30. Whoever relies on the Tao in governing people doesn't try to force issues or defeat enemies by force of arms. For every force, there is a counterforce. Violence, even well-intentioned, always rebounds upon oneself. The master does his job, and then stops. He understands that the universe is forever out of control, and that trying to dominate events goes against the current of the Tao. Because he believes in himself, he doesn't try to convince others. Because he is content with himself, he doesn't need others' approval. Because he accepts himself, the whole world accepts him. Chapter 31. Weapons are the tools of violence. All decent people detest them. Weapons are the tools of fear. A decent person will avoid them, except in the direst necessity, and, if compelled, will use them only with the utmost restraint. Peace is the highest value. If the peace has been shattered, how can one be content? His enemies are not demons, but human beings like himself. He doesn't wish them personal harm, nor does he rejoice in victory. How could he rejoice in victory and delight in the slaughter of people? He enters a battle gravely, with sorrow and with great compassion, as if he were attending a funeral. Chapter 32. The Tao is forever undefined. Small though it is in the unformed state, it cannot be grasped. If kings and lords could harness it, the 10,000 things would naturally obey. Heaven and earth would come together, and gentle rain would fall. People would need no more instruction. and all things would take their course. Once the whole is divided, the parts need names. There are already enough names. One must know when to stop. Knowing when to stop averts trouble. The Tao is to the world what a great river or an ocean is to the streams and brooks. Chapter 33. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. If you realize that you have enough, you are truly rich. If you stay in the center, and embrace death with your whole heart, you will endure forever. Chapter 34. The great Tao flows everywhere, both to the left and to the right. The 10,000 things depend upon it. It holds nothing back. It fulfills its purpose silently and makes no claim. It nourishes the 10,000 things, and yet is not their lord. It has no aim. It is very small. The 10,000 things return to it, yet it is not their lord. It is very great. It does not show greatness, and is therefore truly great. Chapter 35. Hold on to the great image, and the whole world will come to you. They come without harm, in peaceful coexistence. Guests of the Tao. What is the taste of the Tao? It is bland, without flavor. When you look for it, it cannot be seen. When you listen for it, it cannot be heard. When you use it, it cannot be exhausted. Chapter 36. If you want to shrink something, you must first allow it to expand. If you want to get rid of something, you must first allow it to flourish. If you want to take something, you must first allow it to be given. This is called the subtle perception of the way things are. The soft overcomes the hard. The slow overcomes the fast. Let your workings remain a mystery. Just show people the results. Chapter 37. The Tao does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. If rulers could center themselves in it, the 10,000 things would develop naturally. If they still desire to act, they would return to the simplicity of formless substance. Without form, there is no desire. Without desire, there is tranquility. And in this way, all things would be at peace. Chapter 38. A person of high virtue does not cling to their virtue, and is therefore truly virtuous. A person of low virtue is attached to their virtue, and is therefore not truly virtuous. A person of high virtue takes no deliberate action, and leaves nothing undone. A person of low virtue takes action, and there is much left undone. A person of high benevolence takes action, but has no hidden agenda. A person of high righteousness takes action, but has a hidden agenda. A person of high propriety takes action, and when no one responds, they resort to force. Thus, when the Tao is lost, virtue appears. When virtue is lost, benevolence appears. When benevolence is lost, righteousness appears. When righteousness is lost, propriety appears. Propriety is a mere shadow of faithfulness and sincerity, and it is the beginning of disorder. Foreknowledge is the flowery embellishment of the Tao, and the beginning of delusion. Therefore, the truly great person abides in substance, and does not dwell on the thin and superficial. They abide in the fruit, not the flower. Thus, they discard the latter and hold on to the former. Chapter 39. In ancient times, those who attained the One, heaven, through the One, became clear. Earth, through the One, became stable. Spirits, through the One, became divine. Valleys, through the One, became full. All beings, through the One, became alive. Lords and kings, through the One, established order. Without clarity, heaven would crack. Without stability, earth would collapse. Without divine spirits, the valleys would dry up. Without life, all beings would perish. Without order, lords and kings would fall. Therefore, humility is the root of nobility. Lowliness is the foundation of loftiness. Lords and kings call themselves orphaned, lonely, and unworthy. Is this not acknowledging humility as their root? Do not desire to shine like jade. Be like an ordinary stone. Chapter 40. Returning is the motion of the Tao. Yielding is the function of the Tao. All things in the world are born of being. Being is born of non-being. Chapter 41. When a wise person hears of the Tao, they strive to practice it. When an average person hears of the Tao, they sometimes hold on to it and sometimes lose it. When a foolish person hears of the Tao, they laugh at it loudly. If they didn't laugh, it wouldn't be the Tao. Thus, there is a saying: the path of light seems dark. The path that advances seems to retreat. The level path seems uneven. High virtue seems like a valley. Great purity seems tarnished. Wide virtue seems insufficient. Established virtue seems insecure. Solid virtue seems changeable. The great square has no corners. Great talents ripen late. Great sound is silent. Great form has no shape. The Tao is hidden and nameless, yet it alone nourishes and completes all things. Chapter 42. The Tao gives birth to the One. The One gives birth to the Two. The Two gives birth to the Three. The Three gives birth to all things. All things carry yin and embrace yang. They blend their life breaths to achieve harmony. People dislike being called orphaned, lonely, and unworthy. But the lords and kings use these names for themselves. Thus, some gain by losing, and some lose by gaining. What others teach, I also teach. A violent person will not die a natural death. I consider this the father of all teachings. Chapter 43. The softest things in the world overcome the hardest things in the world. Non-being penetrates even where there is no space. Thus, I know the value of non-action. Teaching without words and performing without actions are rarely practiced. Yet, there is nothing that cannot be accomplished through them. Chapter 44. Fame or the self, which is more important? The self or wealth, which is more precious? Gain or loss, which is more painful? Excessive love brings great expense. Excessive hoarding leads to heavy loss. To know when you have enough is to avoid disgrace. To know when to stop is to avoid danger. Thus, one can endure indefinitely. Chapter 45. Great perfection seems imperfect, but its usefulness is not diminished. Great fullness seems empty, but its usefulness is not exhausted. Great straightness seems crooked. Great skill seems clumsy. Great eloquence seems tongue-tied. Movement overcomes cold, stillness overcomes heat. Clear-minded stillness is the standard for the world. Chapter 46. When the world is in accord with the Tao, the racehorses are used for farming. When the world is not in accord with the Tao, war horses are bred on the borders. There is no greater calamity than desire. There is no greater misfortune than discontent. There is no greater curse than greed. Therefore, knowing contentment brings satisfaction, and always being content brings eternal happiness. Chapter 47. Without going out the door, one can know the world. Without looking out the window, one can see the Tao of heaven. The further one travels, the less one knows. Therefore, the sage knows without moving, understands without looking, and accomplishes without doing. Chapter 48. In pursuing learning, one gains daily. In practicing the Tao, one loses daily. Losing and losing more, one reaches a state of effortless action. Through effortless action, nothing is left undone. To rule the world, always act without striving. By striving, one is unfit to rule the world. Chapter 49. The sage has no fixed mind. The people's minds become their own. To those who are good, I am good. To those who are not good, I am also good. The virtue of goodness is attained. To those who are sincere, I am sincere. To those who are not sincere, I am also sincere. The virtue of sincerity is attained. The sage dwells in the world with a mind at ease, and regards all people as their own children. Chapter 50. Coming into life, entering death. The followers of life, 3 and 10. The followers of death, 3 and 10. Those whose lives are moved toward death. Also 3 and 10. Why? Because they live lives of excess. I've heard that one who excels in managing life doesn't encounter rhinos or tigers in the wild, nor is touched by weapons in battle. The rhino has no place to jab its horn. The tiger has no place to latch its claw. The weapon has no place to lodge its blade. Why? Because there is no room for death. Chapter 51. The Tao gives birth to all things, and virtue nourishes them. Matter shapes them, and circumstances complete them. That is why all things respect the Tao and honor virtue. Respect for the Tao and honoring virtue are not commanded, but are the natural response. Therefore, the Tao gives birth to all things, and virtue nourishes them. They grow, develop, mature, and decay, each in their own way. Creating without possessing, nurturing without dominating. This is called the mysterious virtue. Chapter 52. The world has a beginning, which we may regard as the mother of the world. Having recognized the mother, we may know her children. Knowing the children and returning to the mother, one is free from danger throughout one's life. Close the mouth, shut the doors, and to the end of life, one will not be exhausted. Open the mouth, increase one's affairs, and to the end of life, one will not be saved. Seeing the small is called clarity. Maintaining gentleness is called strength. Use the light, but return to the dark. This is called practicing the eternal. Chapter 53. If I have even just a little sense, I will walk on the main path of the Tao, and fear only straying from it. The main path is smooth and straight, but people often prefer the side paths. The courts are full, the fields are barren, and the granaries are empty. Wearing fine clothes, wielding sharp swords, satiating oneself with food and drink, and possessing more than one needs, this is called robbery and extravagance. This is not the Tao. Chapter 54. What is well established cannot be uprooted. What is well embraced cannot slip away. Cultivate virtue in yourself, and it will be genuine. Cultivate it in the family, and it will be abundant. Cultivate it in the community, and it will be enduring. Cultivate it in the nation, and it will be prosperous. Cultivate it in the world, and it will be universal. Therefore, see yourself in others and others in yourself. Nurture the family by extending yourself to the community to the nation, and the nation to the world. How do I know the world is like this? By this. Chapter 55. One who is filled with the Tao is like a newborn child. Poisonous insects will not sting it, wild beasts will not seize it, and birds of prey will not strike it. Its bones are weak, its tendons are soft, yet its grasp is firm. It does not know the union of male and female, yet its organ stirs with vitality. It can cry all day without becoming hoarse. Such is the harmony within. To understand harmony is to know the eternal. To know the eternal is to be enlightened. To increase life is to invite misfortune. The mind controlling the breath is called forced action. Things reach their prime and then decay. This is not the Tao. What is not the Tao will soon perish. Chapter 56. Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. Close the mouth, shut the doors. Blunt the sharpness, untie the knots. Dim the glare, and be one with the dust. This is called the mysterious unity. One who has achieved this unity is detached, and cannot be swayed by emotions or disturbed by trials. One cannot be tempted, nor can one be harmed. And one cannot be elevated or lowered. Such a person is honored by the world. Chapter 57. Govern with honesty, wage war with surprise tactics, and win the world by not striving. How do I know this is so? The more prohibitions there are, the poorer the people become. The more weapons there are, the more chaos arises in the nation. The more knowledge people possess, the more strange things occur. The more laws are enacted, the more thieves and bandits there are. Therefore, the sage says, I take no action, and the people naturally transform. I am at peace, and the people naturally become righteous. I do not interfere, and the people naturally become prosperous. I have no desires, and the people naturally become simple. Chapter 58. When the government is unobtrusive, the people are content. When the government is strict, the people are in want. Misfortune arises from fortune, and fortune hides within misfortune. Who knows the ultimate end? There is no standard of right and wrong. The standard of right and wrong is constantly changing. People's confusion is long-lasting. Thus, the sage is upright without causing harm, honest without offending, straightforward without being rigid, and bright without dazzling. Chapter 59. In governing people and serving heaven, there is nothing better than moderation. To be moderate is to follow the Daoism. Following the Daoism means accumulating virtue. By accumulating virtue, there is nothing one cannot overcome. When there is nothing one cannot overcome, one's limits are unknown. The one who knows no limits can govern a nation. When one governs with the mother of the nation, one will have long-lasting rule. This is called having deep roots and a firm foundation, the Tao of long life and lasting vision. Chapter 60. Governing a large nation is like cooking a small fish. When the world is ruled in accordance with the Tao, the spirits lose their power. It is not that the spirits lose their power, but that their power does not harm the people. It is not only the spirit's power that does not harm the people, but the sage also does not harm the people. Since both do not harm the people, their virtues merge and return to the people. Chapter 61. A large nation is like the lowest river, the confluence of the world, the receptive female of the world. The female always overcomes the male with serenity, using serenity as the lower position. Thus, if a large nation takes a lower position, it can take smaller nations. If a small nation takes a lower position, it can be taken by a larger nation. Thus, one takes by taking the lower position, the other is taken by taking the lower position. A large nation wants nothing more than to unite and protect people, and a small nation wants nothing more than to enter and serve the larger one. Both can achieve their desires. Thus, the great should take the lower position. Chapter 62. The Tao is the source of all things, the treasure of the virtuous, and the refuge for the unvirtuous. Fine words can buy honor, and fine deeds can gain respect. Even if people are not virtuous, why should they be abandoned? When a ruler is enthroned or high officials installed, rather than presenting them with jade and horses, it is better to sit still and offer the Tao. Why was the Tao valued by the ancients? Was it not because it could be sought and obtained, and those guilty of sins could find forgiveness? Thus, it is the most valued thing in the world. Chapter 63. Act without action, manage without meddling, taste without tasting. Greatness is ordinary, many are few. Repay hatred with virtue. Deal with the difficult while it is still easy. Deal with the great while it is still small. The difficult tasks of the world must be handled through the simple tasks. The great tasks of the world must be handled through the small tasks. Therefore, the sage never takes on great tasks, yet is able to accomplish great things. One who makes promises lightly must have little trust. One who sees many difficulties must have little ability. The sage confronts difficulties, and for that reason has no difficulties. Chapter 64. That which is at rest is easy to hold. That which has not yet begun is easy to plan for. That which is fragile is easy to break. That which is small is easy to scatter. Act before things exist. Manage before things are in disorder. A tree as big as a man's embrace begins as a tiny shoot. A terrace 9 stories high begins with a mound of earth. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Act and you will fail. Grasp and you will lose. The sage does not act and therefore does not fail. Does not grasp and therefore does not lose. People often fail at the point of success. Be as careful at the end as at the beginning, and there will be no failure. The sage does not treasure what is difficult to attain, does not value rare goods, learns to unlearn, and returns to what the multitude has left behind. By following the Tao, the sage assists all things to return to their own nature, and does not presume to act. Chapter 65. In ancient times, those who practiced the Tao well did not use it to enlighten the people, but to keep them simple. The difficulty in governing people comes from their knowing too much. Thus, using intelligence to govern a nation is a curse to the nation. Not using intelligence to govern a nation is a blessing to the nation. Those who understand these two principles know the eternal standard. Knowing the eternal standard is called mystic virtue. Mystic virtue is deep and far-reaching, and together with all things, it returns to the great unity. Chapter 66. Why do rivers and seas become kings of 100 valleys? Because they excel in taking the lower position. Hence they can be kings of 100 valleys. Thus, if the sage wishes to be above the people, he must speak humbly to them. If he wishes to be in front of the people, he must place himself behind them. In this way, the sage stays above, and the people do not feel oppressed. He stands in front, and the people do not feel harmed. Thus, everyone supports him without resentment. Because he does not contend with anyone, so no one can contend with him. Chapter 67. The world says that my Tao is great, and resembles nothing else. It is because it is great, that it resembles nothing else. If it did resemble something, it would have long been small. I have 3 treasures. Hold and keep them. The first is called compassion. The second is called frugality. The third is called not daring to be ahead in the world. Compassionate, thus able to be brave. Frugal, thus able to be generous. Not daring to be ahead in the world, thus able to lead. Now, if one is brave but discards compassion, generous but discards frugality, and leads but discards humility, death will surely follow. Through compassion in battle, one will be victorious. In defense, one will be secure. Heaven will save and protect those who have compassion, and will guard them with compassion. Chapter 68. The best warrior is not warlike. The best fighter does not display anger. The best conqueror does not engage the enemy. The best leader of people takes the lowest position. This is the power of non-contention. This is the ability to employ others. This is uniting with heaven, the ultimate principle of the ancients. Chapter 69. In warfare, there is a saying, I dare not be the host but prefer to be the guest. I dare not advance an inch but prefer to retreat a foot. This means, no advance, yet still progress. No retreat, yet still gain ground. No hostility, yet still engage. No battle, yet still prevail. There is no greater disaster than underestimating the enemy. Underestimating the enemy nearly cost me my treasures. Thus, when 2 equal forces meet, the side that is compassionate shall win. Chapter 70. My words are easy to understand and easy to practice. Yet no one in the world can understand or practice them. My words have an ancient source, and my actions are governed by principles. Because people do not understand this, they do not understand me. Those who understand me are few, and therefore I am highly valued. Thus, the sage wears coarse clothes, but carries a precious stone in his heart. Chapter 71. To know that you do not know is best. To not know but think you know is a disease. Only by recognizing this disease as a disease can you be free of it. The sage is free of this disease because he recognizes it as a disease. By recognizing it as such, he is free of it. Chapter 72. When people have no fear of force, then great force descends upon them. Do not restrict their dwellings. Do not oppress their livelihoods. If you do not oppress them, they will not grow weary of you. Thus, the sage knows himself but does not show himself, cherishes himself but does not exalt himself. Therefore, he discards the latter and takes the former. Chapter 73. The bold and daring will be killed. The bold and not daring will survive. Of these two, one brings benefit, the other brings harm. Heaven hates what it hates. Who knows the reason? Thus, the sage finds it difficult to act. The way of heaven excels in overcoming though it does not contend, in responding though it does not speak, in attracting though it does not summon, in being at ease though it does not plan. The net of heaven is vast. Though wide-meshed, nothing escapes it. Chapter 74. If the people do not fear death, how can they be threatened with death? If the people are made to fear death constantly, and the unruly are caught and executed, who would dare to be unruly? There is always an executioner to administer death. To take the place of the executioner and kill is like taking the place of a master carpenter and cutting wood. Rarely, one who takes the place of the master carpenter and cuts wood avoids injuring his own hands. Chapter 75. The people's hunger arises from the ruler's excessive demands, which cause the people's hunger. The people's difficulty in being governed arises from the ruler's excessive actions, which cause the people's difficulty in being governed. The people's disregard for death arises from the ruler's excessive desire for life, which causes the people's disregard for death. Thus, those who do not strive for living are better than those who value living. Chapter 76. When people are born, they are soft and flexible. When they die, they are hard and rigid. When plants and trees are alive, they are soft and pliant. When they are dead, they are brittle and dry. Thus, rigidity and hardness are the companions of death, and softness and flexibility are the companions of life. Therefore, when an army is inflexible, it is destined for defeat. When a tree is inflexible, it is ready to be cut down. The hard and rigid will fall. The soft and flexible will rise. Chapter 77. The way of heaven is like the bending of a bow. The high is lowered, the low is raised. It takes from what has abundance, and gives to what is lacking. The way of heaven takes from those who have abundance, and gives to those who lack. The way of people is not like this. They take from those who lack, to offer to those who have abundance. Who can offer their abundance to the world? Only the sage. The sage acts without expectation, accomplishes without claiming credit, and does not wish to display his wisdom. Chapter 78. Nothing in the world is softer and weaker than water. Yet nothing is better at attacking the hard and strong. There is no substitute for it. The weak can overcome the strong. The soft can overcome the hard. Everyone in the world knows this, but they cannot put it into practice. Therefore, the sage says, "He who bears the disgrace of his people is called the lord of the land. He who bears the misfortune of the state is called the king of the world." Truthful words seem paradoxical. Chapter 79. When settling a great dispute, there will surely be remaining resentment. How can this be considered good? Therefore, the sage holds the left-hand part of the contract, and does not demand payment from the other party. Those who have virtue, attend to their obligations. Those without virtue attend to their claims. The way of heaven is impartial. It is always with a good person. Chapter 80. Imagine a small state with a small population. Let there be labor-saving tools that are not used. Let people consider death and not move far. Though they have boats and carriages, no one goes on a journey. Though they have armor and weapons, no one displays them. Let people return to knotting cords for counting. Let them be content with their food, pleased with their clothing, satisfied with their homes, and protective of their customs. Though neighboring states are within sight, and their dogs and roosters can be heard, the people grow old and die, without visiting each other. Chapter 81. True words are not beautiful. Beautiful words are not true. The good are not argumentative. The argumentative are not good. The wise are not learned. The learned are not wise. The sage does not hoard. The more he does for others, the more he has. The more he gives to others, the greater his abundance. The way of heaven is to benefit, not to harm. The way of the sage is to do, not to contend.